Hello and welcome to another cheap edition of the Pittsburgh Sports Memories podcast. I'm your co-host Steve Wirt, and as usual, I'm joined by,
I'm Tim Hannon.
and I'm not cheap shotting Tim Hannon right now. I promise. We're if I could, I would. This episode's all going to be about what I would consider cheap shots. And I guess, like a lot of things, it's in the eye of your observer or eye of the beholder. Much like beauty, cheap shots are in the eye of the beholder. I would define that as you're making a play that's not within the rules of the game, or you're not trying to do something that's going to get you the ball or score a goal or prevent a play runs from scoring. You're just doing intent to injure.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with intent being the key word there because a lot of times things happen. A lot of times I was going full speed and I couldn't stop myself and I was trying to make a play and he ducked his head and right. So it really is all about intent.
Well, without further ado, and as for this, we're going to rate these on a scale from Lady Bing to Vontez Burfict. And if you're not familiar who Lady Bing is, she was she was married to somebody that the whoever's in charge of Canada was, I think it was somebody in charge of Canada, and she in hockey she would award every year the most, what did they say, sportsman-like player. So normally that's a guy that doesn't go in the penalty box, doesn't hit guys from behind, doesn't hit people with their elbow or slash them. So a little bit. And of course, Vontez Burfict, if you don't know who he is, he was a linebacker from the Cincinnati Bengals and then later the Raiders, who was just, I don't think he ever saw a dirty hit he didn't like. And he eventually pretty much got kicked out of the league because of it. He wouldn't adjust his play. So,
Yeah. Marie Evelyn Bing, by the way.
yes. Who was she married to? She was married to like somebody
The
important.
Lord Bing, the 12th Governor General of Canada,
Yeah.
whatever that
Okay.
means.
So maybe he was pre-prime minister days or something. I don't know.
I don't know what they do up
Yeah.
there. I didn't even think they really had an organized system. So yeah, kudos to them for having some people in power, I guess.
Well, the first stuff is a pretty obvious one. Lynn Swan, he was a clothesline by the Raiders. Jack Tatum hit him pretty hard, but there was a guy named George Atkinson who really was the chief culprit.
Let's see if we can take a look and see how Lynn Swan got hurt. I'm telling you, they're picking on Lynn. And I don't think you're supposed to do that. You know what I mean? I think that's Atkinson did another no-no and gave him a karate chop across the back of the neck.
You mean you're not supposed to take a guy's head off?
I think that's a no-no. I don't think you're supposed to do it. I really do.
So if you didn't hear, karate chop to the back of the neck pretty much describes it accurately. Like Lynn Swan's just running in the middle of the field. There's no pass thrown to him. He's not going to make a block. I think it was a pass to Franco, and like he's 20 yards away from the play, and George Atkins just literally runs up behind him and hits him in the back of the head. After this game, like Chuck Noll called the Raiders a criminal element, and it was really bad. I mean, yeah. So the day after the game, Noll rose before a luncheon press conference in Pittsburgh and spoke coldly of a criminal element in the NFL. He said that players like Atkinson should be kicked out of the league. Pete Rozelle, who was the current commissioner and actually kind of like he was the founding commissioner of the NFL, did fine Atkinson $1,500 after watching a tape of the play after watching a tape of this play. Pete Rozelle fired off a letter to Atkinson and said, "In 16 years in this office, I do not recall a more flagrant foul than your clubbing the back of Swan's head totally away from the play. Our sport obviously involves intense physical contact, but requires of all players discipline and control and remaining within the rules. Every player deserves protection from the kind of unnecessary roughness that could end his career." And the only reason we know this, and it's not like buried in like some NFL, because this should have really, this is an internal NFL memo. Do you know why this was?
Why it went public?
Yeah, I think it was the lawsuit. Yeah.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
because Al Davis sued. Was it Al? Yeah, it was Al Davis, or was it one of the Raiders? I think it was one of the Raiders
It was
sued Chuck Noll.
Atkinson.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like, I mean, Davis was orchestrating the whole thing.
Yeah. This never would have come to light. And they kind of looked really bad, because of this. So, but they didn't take kindly to being called a criminal element. And it's rare, like Chuck Noll, like we said, like this and the Jerry Glanville thing, like that's probably like as controversial as Chuck Noll ever got, quite honestly.
Yeah, and the Raiders at that lawsuit, they argued that Mel Blount, he was like spiked Cliff Branch into the ground in the same game. And so they were arguing, well, their players do the same thing. So is it really, it's totally unfair for him to single out Atkinson when his players are doing the same kind of stuff. And then Noll did a sort of a poor job of defending Mel Blount. He kind of said, well, yeah, Mel Blount shouldn't have done that either. And that ticked off Mel Blount. I mean, it was a whole mess.
So I gave this one the full perfect because it definitely there's no reason to do this besides intent to injure. There's no play being made. This guy's it's not even debatable, really. Moving to hockey, we're gonna have like a pair of hits because I think these kind of go together. And I kind of ranked them separately, but they're two separate hits and they're both involving Sidney Crosby. And I think the first one kind of leads to the second one. Even though they're by different people on different teams, it definitely is part of the same injury. And the first one is Sidney Crosby in the Winter Classic. Do you remember the Winter Classic at Heinz Field? Do you remember Heinz Field? Yes, yeah. Acrisure Stadium. But yes, they played an outdoor hockey game at Acrisure Stadium for everybody that doesn't remember 2011. And I think the Penguins were defending champions that year. Yes, they were. Correct, Tim? Yeah. That was 2011.
No,
yeah.
they were 2 years away. So
they were
2009. Yeah. So
okay. All right. So nevertheless, the Penguins are playing in a Winter Classic because it's good ratings and it's against Ovechkin. It's Ovechkin, Crosby, and enter some schmuck named David Steckel. Who cares about David Steckel? Well, nobody much except for Sidney Crosby.
Well, this last minute, Sidney Crosby fell a couple times, but watch Crosby there. He gets blindsided. I believe that was David Steckel that was going up the ice trying to draw in the play, jump into the play, and there you see Crosby getting some attention.
He doesn't even have the puck. He's nowhere near the puck. And as far as I know, you can't hit people without the puck, or at least having touched the puck. You can't just go around hitting people. Well, that's what David Steckel does. He's just skating up the ice. He actually goes out of his way. Well, maybe not completely out of his way, but as he goes by, he literally sticks his shoulder out and hits Crosby in the head as he's not looking because the puck is like going up the ice and it literally spins Crosby in the air. And that kind of starts like Sidney Crosby's whole concussion thing. And I think he left that game and he was out for a couple more games, 41 games. But he had another hit from Krejcik later that he missed 60 games, and we'll go over that. But I think that was definitely a perfect hit because there's no play on the puck being made, and it was definitely an intent to injure. And I don't think anything was ever done to David Steckel about that. I think he totally got away with it.
No, I'll get on my soapbox a little bit later about that, but I'll let you go through all these hockey ones first because that's very typical of the National Hockey League.
And so now later there was another hit from a guy named David Krejcik in Boston. And that one, Crosby did end up missing 60 games. And I think it was the following year, but I think those started to add up.
Right.
So here's the one by Krejcik, and I have a little bit of a different opinion on this.
Crosby wins the faceoff back to Brooks Orpik, but David Krejci knocks it down at the line, fends off the Crosby hit.
Now, it doesn't sound like much, and it doesn't look like much, but he got hit, and like, that's a whoops. Like, the guy, Krejcik, kind of lifts his elbow up, but Krejcik has the puck, and he's against the boards, and Crosby's going in to check him and get the puck. So this is a hockey play being made, and Crosby literally, in my opinion, knocks himself out as he goes in to get the puck. But it's a hockey play. Hockey's a rough sport. this is what happens. This I classified as a Lady Byng hit because I don't think there was anything unsportsmanlike about that, even though this was much worse in as far as Crosby's injury. He ended up missing 60 games because of this.
Yeah, that's a good take. It's really not. I don't think that was a dirty hit. That was a bang bang play along the boards.
The guy had the
going
puck.
for the puck,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So I mean, it's not that's so different than like way away from the play. And like you said, it caused damage, but would it have caused that damage had it not been for the Steckel hit the year before? Because that's really what started that whole mess with his concussions and with his neck. And he really missed the better part of 2 seasons there in his prime, which really stunk. But I agree. I think that to me, the Steckel hit was dirty and it kicked off the whole thing. The Krejci thing was just, unfortunate.
So continuing with hitting people in the head for no reason. This is a Tim edition. So Matt Cook on Ryan McDonough for the Rangers. Matt Cook is Matt Cook. He's not quite a goon. Like I would classify, there's like guys that are goons, like Marty McSorley. Who was the other guy? Bob Probert.
Yeah.
Ty
Domi, guys that would fight. Matt Cook wasn't a fighter per se. He was
he was a physical player that didn't know how to like not hit people dirtily.
Yeah.
But let's see this from the opposite side.
That is nasty.
That's a flying elbow.
He's going to see, I guarantee you, he's going to sit some games for that one. Absolutely. He had one thing in his mind, and that was to separate the helmet from the head of Ryan McDonough. That was a cheap shot by Matt Cook.
Yeah, just to describe, Ryan McDonough is on like the center of the ice along the boards, and Matt Cook literally skates from like, I don't know, downtown Manhattan with his elbow out to like hit him in the like. It's pretty blatant that was an intent to injure. At least he kind of had the puck before. I think he like shoveled the puck away and then he hit him. So at least there was some sort of hockey play going on. And I guess that's what differentiates Matt Cook a little bit from the other guy, but that's a dangerous play. And you can call that any way: roughing, boarding, elbowing, charging. Like he had more than 5 steps. You can't have more than 5 steps going into the guy on the boards. At least the guy's back wasn't to him, and you hit him in the head. So I mean, he ended up getting 17 games and the playoffs, which that was a major league penalty at the time. But once again, I think Matt Cook's reputation had kind of preceded him at that point. He had had a lot of other run-ins with the NHL safety. What is it they call it? Player safety office. And I forget who was running. It was somebody a joke. It was like Chris Pronger or some goon was running the player safety office.
I think it was Brandon. I think it might have been Brendan Shanahan who was.
It was like a goon. They always put
player. Yeah.
It's always like a good, like, let's put Bob Probert in charge.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the rare times. So, I mean, I like that we have
this was deserved. This was deserved.
Yeah, I like that we have this in here too, because I think we're trying to be fair here too, right? This isn't just our guys always get cheap shot and we never do it. Like, no, we've had Pittsburgh players that have been guilty of the same, and this is one of the more egregious instances. And Matt Cook, and you're right, this wasn't his first offense. He did this kind of stuff a lot. And this one was so blatant. The NHL finally stepped in there like, look, you're gone basically the rest of the season.
So in our trio of Penguins penalties that involve elbows, you know where I'm going with this one, huh, Tim?
Yep.
That would be the Sidney Crosby, Jacob Trouba incident. And this one, I think out of all of them actually had a direct effect on the Penguins losing. I mean, I will say this, the Steckel one definitely cost Crosby probably a shot at making like a run at Wayne Gretzky. Like if he doesn't get that hit, maybe he's like where Ovechkin is or around Ovechkin's numbers. But this cost the Penguins a playoff series.
Yeah, and a lot of worry, of course, on everybody's mind. Early in the game, he took that high stick. He took a couple of bumps throughout the game, but I think towards the end of the middle of that second period, this chicken wing there by Jacob Trouba was the one that may have affected Sidney Crosby as he exited the ice at that particular moment.
So there was a play in the middle of the ice between the dots. And I will say this, at least it's a hockey player. It's not completely like dirty, but he comes in and Crosby kind of kneels like he's squatting down maybe a little bit. And Trouba sticks out his elbow, which that should at least been, I don't think no penalty was called on that. Should at least been an elbowing call, I would have thought. But it happened really quick, and you might have not caught it if you didn't see it in slow motion. And they don't really call penalties in the playoffs anyway. But it did catch Crosby in the head, and it ended up, I think he was out for the rest of the series for that, Tim?
I think he might have came back for Game 7.
In defense of the Rangers, like if the Penguins just play good defense and can hold on to a 2-0 lead for 30 minutes, this doesn't even matter. Maybe it's like one of those more background things like, oh, Crosby, you don't really know as much, but because it goes to 7 games and the Penguins actually lost their first road game 7 in franchise history in Madison Square Garden. So, I rated this more of a borderline perfect. I know people were really up in arms about this at the time, especially with Sidney Crosby's, history of concussions. I don't know. I don't see it as blatant as the other ones. I think they should at least, if they would have caught it, like I could see how you could miss it because it was kind of quick and it was in the middle of the ice. Sting with now that was, I thought, borderline. This one definitely is. There's no borderline about it. And we're sticking with hockey, and this is definitely the definition of garage league. And for some reason, it involves the Rangers again. I don't know why it is. The Rangers like to take cheap shots at superstars in Pittsburgh, but apparently they do. So this would be the Mario Lemieux, Adam Graves incident, and this was 91. And the Penguins were on the power play, and Mario Lemieux's at the point. Well, I think he had the puck at one point, and Mario's like, just handling the puck, and instead of like trying to get the puck, Adam Graves just literally takes his stick and just literally whacks him on the hands. There's no attempt to even go for the puck.
Power play of the game. The Penguins lead the NHL. A penalty called on Graves.
Graves got his stick up in the face of Lemieux right away. Dan Mariuelli's arm went up.
Well, thank God for Dan Mariuelli. He actually he hadn't got him in the face. He actually hit him right on the gloves, and he actually ended up breaking his wrist. And Mario was expected to be out a month because of that, but he did come back amazingly in Game 2 of the next series against the Bruins. The best thing about this was the Penguins went on to win the cup and beat the Rangers and chant 1940 because they still hadn't won a cup. Although they would go on to win a cup a couple years later. But quote by, I think this was Phil Bourque, the frustrating thing is there's nothing we can do to even it out. You want revenge. You want an eye for an eye, as the old saying goes, and you want the league to do something about it. Our best revenge is to beat them in the series. Graves got suspended 4 games for that. So we say that the NHL never does anything to protect their superstars. They did suspend Adam Graves for 4 games, which is a lot in the playoffs. That's almost a whole series, basically.
Yeah, I think to Phil Bourque's point, though, like it's not an even trade because like who's Adam? Mario Lemieux was the best player in the world in 1992. And Adam Graves is Adam Graves. Like, if you really wanted to be fair, they would have suspended Messier for 4 games just to even it out.
I think Messier was hurt, though, I think.
Oh, that's right. Well, let's suspend him anyway. But yeah, it was totally, it's like, it just, that's the thing that even in not even going back to the 2022 series with Trouba, it's like, even if you suspend Trouba, it's like, okay, but we lost Crosby, so it's like, it's almost like there's nothing really to stop these guys from doing this. Now, like you said, you still have to step in and do something. And in this case, they actually did, to their credit, like you said.
And I called this the full perfect because he wasn't making a play on the puck or any. I mean, I guess Lemieux at least did have the puck, but that was intent to injure. You're whacking somebody in the hands. It wasn't like, oh, I went to go get the puck and it missed and I hit his hands. He went right for his hands, and there's just no two ways about it. So moving back to football, we're going to go to 2005 and a gentleman named Kimo von Oelhoffen. And we've covered this once or twice before. And once again, there's something about Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, and this is on the list at least twice. Teams from different sports too. I don't know what it is when Pittsburgh and Cincinnati get together, whether it's baseball or football, man, stuff happens. So what happens is the beginning of the game, it's the wild card playoffs. Cincinnati's at home. They got a good team. The Steelers got a good team, but they're a wild card. And the first or second play of the game, Carson Palmer hits Chris Henry for like a 70-yard pass play. But unfortunately, at the end of the play, Kimo von Oelhoffen kind of gets thrown to the ground and rolls into Carson Palmer's knee, tearing his knee and ending his game and his season.
I did not see what happened to Carson Palmer. Kimo von Oelhoffen hits him at the left knee. Kimo von, it looks like he's almost, in the knee. That is a tough shot. And what an unbelievable throw he made down the field.
So if you watch the video, you can see von Oelhoffen kind of tries to turn his back, and he was kind of falling. He was breaking through the line past the guard or the tackle, and the guard kind of let him go, and he fell on the ground. I don't think there's any intent to injure here. It just was like, this is a, what happens play. And it was unfortunate for Carson Palmer. It gives Cincinnati fans a great excuse to whine and cry about it. But Kimo was not and once again, this is another, like, if this was a guy that was a dirty player, then I guess people would be more upset about it. But Kimo never played dirty. He was a very clean player and very nice guy, apparently. So what are you going to say, Tim? I mean, are we going to I gave this a Lady Bing. I don't think Kimo, it was just an accident.
I agree. It was Kimo was just trying to charge in. He got tripped up with the offensive lineman. It was not intent. I certainly get why
he turned his back too. Like, you could tell he was trying. Yeah. I don't think he was trying to hit him.
And I certainly get why the Bengal fans were upset. Like, it was literally, they had waited all these years to be in the playoffs. They won the division that year. This was like, they literally waited, what was it, like 15 years or something since they had been in the playoffs. And then the second play of the game, their star quarterback gets knocked out. So I would have been upset too. But like you said, it's just one of those unfortunate things. It was not on purpose. It just wasn't. So
sticking with football, and a guy who was voted the most dirty player in the NFL at one point, that would be one Hines Ward. And he had a hit on a guy. I think he looks like Fred Sanford from Sanford and Son at this point, but that would be Ed Reed. We're also going to include like his hit on Keith Rivers, just to clean up the Hines Ward hits, put them kind of both together, compare and contrast these hits. The first one is definitely Ed Reed I think the Steelers are winning 35-7 at this point, and Ed Reed's just literally playing safety in the middle of the field, nowhere near a play. And Hines Ward just kind of clocks him and knocks him out for absolutely no reason. It's definitely one of the dirtier plays. Hines Ward earned his dirtiest player reputation on this play.
Reed is woozy, and Hines Ward, who has been picking off Ravens DBs all night, able to do it here to Ed Reed, and that's what had Reed woozy and shaken up.
I love how he starts calling for the trainers as soon as he hits them.
Yeah,
that was just that was dirty. There was just no reason for that. I can't even justify it anymore. I mean, I know that's good old fashioned hard playing, but at some point, come on, this guy has a family to feed. Don't hit him. I mean, if there wasn't even like a play to be made, like it would have been one thing if there was a running back over there or something, but I don't know. That's Hines Ward for you.
Did you hear that clicking noise, Steve? That's the sound of like hundreds of people unsubscribing from our podcast because you dared impugn the great Hines Ward.
I love Hines Ward. He's a great physical player. It's just that one. It's 35-7. Come on.
I'm with you. That was a little bit of a, and yeah, he was trying to block him, but there's a difference between blocking and just like getting a running start and just destroying a guy.
I rated that one the full perfect because it's just there's no football play to be made there. It just, I mean, I guess at that point it was within the rules. He didn't hit him while he wasn't looking. I mean, he was kind of tangled up with another blocker and burst off of him and then hit Ed Reed, but it's 35-7. And I realize, oh, you should play every play hard, and maybe you should, but come on, that was a little much in my mind. Now coming up to the next hit was there's a scoreless game in 2008, and Keith Rivers is the big first-round linebacker draft pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. They're gonna take them to the Super Bowl. He's from USC. He's a great player, and there's an early in this game. Ben completes a pass to who was it? Spaeth. I think it was Matt Spaeth, and Matt Spaeth is running down the sideline for a first down, and Keith Rivers is pursuing him. And Hines Ward hits him and breaks his jaw. And I think Keith Rivers was out for the season because of that.
Again to Morelde Moore. He got right by the oncoming rush. The blitz was on by Jonathan Joseph.
Keep an eye on Hines Ward. I mean, this is a guy that throws his body around. He is a most complete receiver in the game.
He literally, like, to Hines Ward's defense, Keith Rivers probably outweighs Hines Ward by 100 pounds. He just knocked him completely over. And that's a play I like by Hines Ward. That's a good play. And watch out for Hines Ward. What is he supposed to do? Just let Keith Rivers tackle Matt Spaeth? I don't. And they actually changed the rules where you're not allowed to block people when they can't see you. I don't even know if you come. No, they changed the rule where you can't come from your own back towards the other goal line and block somebody. And it's the dumbest rule. And it's just,
again, the NFL is a reactive league. So
if you want to fine them and suspend them for the one against Ed Reed, I think that's uncalled for. But this is a scoreless game, and Keith Rivers is actually making a play on the ball. This isn't on the other side of the field. This isn't away from the ball. He's going to make a play. What are you supposed to do? Set a pick like in basketball? I don't know.
It was a really vicious hit too. It was, and like you said, it was a block. I don't think it was dirty, but man, I was at that game. That's the only road Steeler game I've ever attended. And you could hear in that clip the gasp from the crowd in Cincinnati. Everybody's just like, oh, like you could just feel that hit. And when he didn't get up, you're like, boy, he's really hurt, because it was just such a hard hit. And you're right, Hines Ward, you did have to watch out for him because he was going to block like that. And to your point, safeties and cornerbacks and linebackers have been hitting people like that for years. So a lot of wide receivers not allowed to. That's kind of a double standard.
Yeah, I don't understand. I rated that one a Lady Bing because I don't think it was a dirty play. They changed the rules because of it, which it's just I don't have a problem with that play at all. Maybe if he was not, I don't know. I think it's within the rules, and if somebody's going to make a tackle, you're allowed to block them, but apparently not anymore. So go figure. Sticking with actually the name, Vontaze Burfict makes his first appearance on our cheap shot countdown. Can you believe it took this long? This is definitely the king of cheap shots outside of hockey. I can't think of another guy that has been. He's probably one of the dirtiest football players ever. I can't even imagine if he would have played back in the 50s, somebody would have killed him, pulling this crap. Like Chuck Bednarik and Dick Butkus and those guys, they wouldn't have put up with this silliness. But anyway, moving on. Burfict on Big Ben and then Antonio Brown. This one I always thought was a little more borderline because Big Ben actually has the football on this play, and your job is to tackle the guy with the football. Last time I checked, right, Tim? They haven't changed that rule yet, right?
Yeah, and this is in the 2015 playoff game, right?
Yes, this is the 2015 wild card game. I think the Steelers might have been leading at this point.
They were, yeah.
And so Burfict goes to tackle Big Ben on a sack, and he hits him, and Ben kind of falls down.
Roethlisberger in trouble. Decked at the 3 by Burfict, who has the football, but the quarterback is hurt. Roethlisberger
fell on his shoulder.
Oh, boy.
Now, if you watch Burfict stand up, he kind of knees Ben in the shoulder. And I think that's what people saw. And they were like, oh, my goodness, what a dirty, cheap shot. I didn't think that. I think he was just standing up. I don't think that was intentional. But once again, this is like kind of the Matt Cook effect because Burfict by that point had a pretty good rep. Like, no, well, what did I say? I don't know if I would use the word good. He had a reputation of doing things that weren't within the rules. And that like kind of happened. And I think that's a borderline call. And they didn't throw a penalty on it, which you would not be allowed to tackle him because he came down with the full force of his body on top of Ben. You would not be able to make that sack nowadays. They would have thrown a penalty.
That would be a penalty today. But you're right. It if that was Geno Atkins, right, making that same sack, who is not a dirty player, and you know, he makes that sack and Ben gets hurt, you're like, okay, man, that just sucks that Ben got hurt. But nobody would have, I doubt anybody would have been accusing Geno Atkins of playing dirty. But because it was Burfict, I mean, my goodness. And he had already taken out Le'Veon Bell that season. That was the same season he ended Le'Veon Bell seasons. And then he injures Ben in the playoffs. And then, of course, later in the game, you're going to get to that.
Yeah, so later on in the game, Cincinnati's actually, I think, ahead, right? By a couple points, by a point, right? Yes.
Yeah.
And so the Steelers are last gasp. Ben separated shoulder. They stole Brown, so he throws a pass to Antonio Brown on was it 4th and 10? I don't know, 3rd and 10. Let's see. And it was definitely a bad idea to hit Antonio Brown in the head because that had been illegal for years, and it wasn't even close. The pass was way over Brown's head, so if he just doesn't hit him, it's an incomplete pass.
Roethlisberger from the pocket, middle of the field, incomplete.
Personal foul. A flag does come in.
Went to the head.
Lewis Harris is going to be flagged for this on the hit on Antonio Brown, and it's going to put the Steelers in field goal range.
Yeah, he literally there was just no reason. He was running past Brown. If he just doesn't run into Brown or lower his shoulder, I think if he stays upright and runs past Brown and kind of tries to move out of the way, they probably don't call a penalty on that. The ball was way over Brown's head. There was no way he was going to catch that. It wasn't a bang play. I mean, maybe, do you think slow-mo made it look worse than it was? I don't think so. I think this was just a dumb play by a dirty player at the worst possible time for the Bengals.
Yeah. He Burfict was like an addict for dirty play. It's like it's like, well, one drink won't kill me, and he just it's like you said, the whole season's on the line, and they could have stopped the Steelers there, and they could have won, and they could have advanced in the playoffs. But to him, it was more important to. And that was the Bengals of that era. It's like, okay, you may have beaten us, you may have ended our season, but we clubbed your guy in the head. So there's that.
I gave this one the full Burfict. Actually, it's funny. I was watching a highlight, I guess, because I was looking these up. So the algorithm started on a certain, video sharing service, started showing me cheap shots. And Steve Atwater, who was pretty good for a couple of his own, kind of did a very similar hit to this in Super Bowl 31, I want to say. Yeah, 31. What was the one Denver finally won their first Super Bowl?
32.
32? Okay.
Yeah.
So it had been Super Bowl 32, and this was after Denver had scored to take the lead late in the game. And I remember this play because Brett Favre kind of threw it, and it was at least a little closer than the pass, but Atwater and the other defender, he hit more the other defender for the Broncos than the receiver for the Packers. But man, it was very similar to this Burfict hit, but it wasn't considered dirty back then. And Atwater actually hurt himself on the play because he led with his head. So I mean, there was kind of a precedent from years past, but that was what would that have been, 1997? So, I mean, my goodness, by that point, it had been 20 years. So maybe you should stop doing that. Definitely the full Burfict. And I think that's the end of our Vontaze Burfict plays, Tim. Sticking with the NFL here, Turkey Jones, or I guess the guy's name is actually John Jones, but I don't know why he's called Turkey. I didn't really look that up.
Speaking of stuff that the NFL allowed 50 years ago.
Yeah. So this is Terry Bradshaw, and this is in the same season. I think it's 1976
Yes,
again.
correct.
So it's week 5 of 1976 season, and he's sacked by the Cleveland defender, and basically he decides that he's going to suplex him onto the ground. He pile drives a Bradshaw into the ground, and Bradshaw literally is paralyzed for like a couple days and does not play for 3 more weeks. Cleveland did win the game 18-16. This is a pretty scary moment in Terry Bradshaw's career. He did talk about it later in the NFL.
On the final sack, Jones' exuberance sent Steeler fortunes for the game and perhaps the season crashing to the ground. Any remaining hopes Pittsburgh may have harbored about a record 3rd straight Super Bowl were shattered by a stunning 18-16 defeat to Cleveland.
He said he couldn't feel his hands or feet for a couple days after that. He couldn't really move. And it was funny because back then they took him off on a stretcher, but he said they didn't have any place to put him in the locker room. So they took a locker room door off and made a makeshift table out of it and strapped them to the door to immobilize him. And then when he went back to Pittsburgh they had to send him on a flight. They put him on top of the seats on the plane so that he wouldn't move. So thank goodness medical care has evolved since then. Terry obviously survived and won a couple Super Bowls. They did fine Jones for this play. He got fined $3,000, which that's a pretty big fine. What Atkinson only got $1,500 for a much more blatant cheap shot.
Yeah.
He actually was sacking Terry Bradshaw. The only thing he did wrong was he flipped them. Bradshaw, I guess, had been getting away. He was a scrambler still. And instead of just taking him to the ground, he flipped him upside down and pile drived him on his head. And that was, if he just would have tackled him, I don't think anybody would even remember this play except for the Steelers lost.
They interview some of the Steelers defensive players, and a lot of them at the time say they didn't think it was dirty. They understand when you have a quarterback like Bradshaw, like you said, Steve, that could scramble, you can't just wrap him up because he's going to get away. And so he, Bradshaw was kind of squirming, and he felt the best way to tackle him was to pull him backwards, and he ended up spiking him on his head. I don't know that he consciously thought if I do this, I'll spike him right onto his neck. Mm-hmm. It looked probably worse than his intent was. It was, I would say, maybe more reckless than dirty, if that makes sense.
I gave this an almost perfect because I don't think there was necessarily. I think it was oops, I went too far.
Right.
There wasn't a lot of
reckless.
intent.
Yeah.
And reckless is a good way to describe it. He wasn't a dirty player. I haven't heard anybody ever describe this guy as a dirty player. Cleveland sucked back then. I mean, they ended up finishing 3-12 or something, or 3-11. They were horrible. I don't know what else to say about this. I know your mother was rather upset about this play.
I wish I could have my mom on this podcast just to talk about this play, because
she would. She is not like this. She's not like Turkey Jones at all.
50 years later, she it was like it was yesterday to her, and she really it in the how scary it was. She's like, I thought he was dead. I literally thought they had killed him on live.
It looks
TV.
bad. And you can see he is still moving a little bit. So I don't know about Terry saying he was paralyzed, because you could see on the replay, he was moving his legs a little bit after.
Sort of, but it was almost like
a reaction.
Aftershocks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It looked horrific.
So sticking with football, there was a game in 1995, the home opener for the Steelers, and they always go well, right? Yeah. This game was a rough one, and the Steelers ended up winning this game, but they used all 3 quarterbacks. Neil O'Donnell had gotten hurt, and I think he broke his pinky finger or something on his throwing hand. So Mike Tomczak comes in, and he's doing okay until he decides to scramble, and he is scrambling, and he runs back towards his own goal line. They're in I think they were on the other side of the Lions side of the field, and Terry Scroggins literally knocks him in the next week, I think, as the announcer says here. It's one of the worst hits I've ever seen. He's actually runs into the defender.
First down and 10. Good time for Thompson. Now it collapses. Oh, it's knocked into next week by Tracy Scroggins. He's hurt. Tom Zach is knocked silly.
Tracy Scroggins, not Terry Scroggins. My apologies.
Did you recognize the other? So I think Kevin Harlan was the play-by-play guy, but did you hear the guy going, "He's hurt, he's hurt"? Did you recognize?
No, I didn't know. Who was that? Yeah,
it was Jerry Glanville.
Jerry approved of that hit.
Yeah. I was at this game too, and what I remember about that was when Tom Zach was scrambling, you could see Scroggins running from that other direction, and then you saw Tom Zach like turn around right into him, and it was like in slow motion. You're like, "No, Mike, like stop!" And just, I mean, you could see that coming, and you could hear you could hear the gasp in the crowd, like, "Oh." But I'll let you state your opinion here too, Steve. But I think that was just bad timing and a good hit.
And to his credit, Jim Miller did come in. I think Mike Tom Zach only missed the series after that.
Yeah, Tom Zach actually finished the game.
And they won the game. He actually played well enough at the end, and he got him in the field goal range, and Norm Johnson kicks a game-winning field goal.
Yeah.
So Mike Tom Zach, unreal. I mean, this hit looks nasty. I mean, just because the fact that he was literally running one way and he gets decleated like in the air, and Scroggins pile drives him into the turf. It was unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen a hit quite that hard. But I mean, I called it a Lady Bing. That's just football, man. Switching back to hockey, we're going to does anybody remember Darius Kasparaitis? Who doesn't? Do you remember his hit on Eric Lindros?
Oh yeah.
So March 7th, 1998, a game at the Civic Arena. I think the Flyers were on a power play, winning 4-2, and Darius Kasparaitis hits Eric Lindros with probably, I call it borderline. Lindros at least had the puck, and he was entering the zone. So I mean, it's a legit hockey play. But I mean, what happened was Lindros gets concussed, and this is one of those. It's probably more because of how this guy got hurt than anything else. And I think Kasparaitis had a little bit of a reputation too.
Knocked the helmet right out. And they're going after Kasparaitis. The Flyers very concerned. Lindros took a blow to the head, knocked the helmet right off, and he is dazed. Now he's in trouble.
Yeah, I think I agree with, like, he had the puck at his feet. The puck was there. Separate man from puck. That's nothing dirty there. The Flyers didn't appreciate it because they're the Philadelphia Flyers. And to his defense, like, what was like, Lindros was like, what, 6'5", 250, and Kasparaitis was like a normal sized human. I mean, Lindros was huge. And for Kasparaitis to take him out like that, and then Lindros after that had I remember had problems with the concussions after that. And I think this is a Lady Bing. This is a legit hit. This is a hockey play. He probably gets fined for this now. Maybe he doesn't. It's the NHL. I don't know. What say you, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad this one was later on the list because you could accuse us of being, homers because we said all the other, the Trouba hit and the Adam Graves and all that. But this, this was literally, Eric Lindros had a problem with looking down. Like he did that a lot. I think because he was so big, Steve, that and probably most of his career before he got into the NHL, he was 10 times bigger than every other person he played against.
So somebody hit him, they just bounced off.
They just bounced off. So he had this bad habit of looking down, and he was like, he kind of lost control of the puck there, and he was literally like had his head like literally like he was like dropped a contact lens. Like that's what he was doing, right? He was like, where'd it go? And that's what happened. And that wasn't the last time it happened. The Scott Stevens hit in the playoffs when they were playing the Devils a couple of years later was a very similar play where he had his head down and Scott Stevens hit him and he got really, really hurt. And I know the Flyer fans were all mad about that, and they're all mad about Casper, but he just didn't. That was how he got himself hurt, which he didn't have his head on a swivel. Most hockey players do. And I think just because he was so big and so strong, he never really thought he had to worry about that. And unfortunately for him, he ended up having some real concussion issues.
Going back to baseball in a little city in Ohio that's on the Ohio River. Welcome back to the conversation, Cincinnati, Ohio. So it's the 9th inning of a regular season game. The Reds are good. The Pirates are good. Hey, what a shocker. It's August of 2012, Tim, and the Pirates are playing meaningful baseball. Woohoo. And the Reds are too. What Twilight Zone episode of have we stumbled into, huh? The Reds have a guy named how do you say it? Chapman, Aroldis Chapman. Is that how you say it? Aroldis Chapman. Aroldis Chapman is another person that is like 6'7". No, he's not. He's like 6'4", but he's a left-hander. And you think, well, lefties, they're crafty and throw like 80 miles an hour and throw curveballs and stuff. Nope. This guy throws 101 miles per hour. He is basically Randy Johnson if Randy Johnson was Cuban. So the Reds are up 3-0 in the 9th inning because Chapman's a closer. And they have 2 outs in the 9th, and Andrew McCutchen, who's he was basically on pace to become the MVP of baseball, at least the National League. Chapman decides it's a good idea to bean him with nobody on and 2 men out. I am not quite sure why you do this.
Oh, man. Wow. 101 miles per hour. And McCutchen, understandably so, upset.
I don't know what the logic was there. You could even see the catcher, like maybe that looked intentional to me. Maybe he just was trying to throw inside and he lost control of something. It could happen, but at the time, I've always thought that was intentional, and it doesn't even make any sense to hit anybody in that situation. So I'm not sure what that was, besides maybe he was trying to intimidate McCutchen for later in the series if he came up with men on base and he figured he had a chance to do that. So I don't know, Tim. Any figuring out the logic on this one?
I'll probably disagree with you on this one. I think the pitch just got away from him because, like you said, there's no motive. They have a 3-run lead. You don't want to start something. You're trying to close out the game. You don't want to start something by putting a guy on base. So
especially McCutchen's a good base stealer too.
Right. Yeah. It makes no sense for him to do it on purpose. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there that again, the guy threw so hard that you're going to have 1 or 2 just maybe get away from you. That's all.
All right. Well, I'll give you that. I just chalk this up to Cincinnati teams doing stupid stuff late in games. I gave them the full perfect because I still think it's intentional, but I can see your point. I don't know. I remember this happening. I think it's just he was trying to intimidate the Pirates. I really do. I totally think that. And
well, those 2 guys are teammates now.
So we're going to stay in Cincinnati, that great American city, right, Tim? Only we're going to bow back to 1974. Neither of us were alive in 1974, but hey, we're having fun, right? It's the Nixon administration. No, it's the Ford administration. Gerald Ford's in the White House. Watergate has happened. Good time is being had by America, right? So Doc Ellis is on the mound, and Doc Ellis is sober, I think, for this game, although what he does doesn't make any sense. So Doc Ellis decides that he's really sick of losing to the Reds, and he decides, I'm going to bean every player that comes up to bat for the Cincinnati Reds in the first inning. This isn't like late in the game in a blowout. I'm just going to go for it. And he does. That's the best part. He hit Pete Rose. Who's the guy who was the announcer on Sunday Night Baseball? Joe Morgan, I think.
Yeah.
And then he was going to bean John. There was another guy in there that I don't recognize, but he couldn't hit that guy because Doc Ellis in his own interview said that guy was like playing dodgeball at that point. He was like dancing around so he couldn't hit him. And he was going to beat Johnny Bench next, but Danny Murtaugh caught on to what was going on and took him out. This was not I lost one. This was intentional by Doc Ellis. It just didn't make much of make sense. And because it's 1974, we don't have any video. I wish we would have had video of this. Now that would have been fun to see the reaction of what was going on. But yeah, it's just the full Vontaze Burfict. There's just no like you literally took yourself out of the game, which means your bullpen has to come in the first inning with the bases loaded. There's just no reason to do this. But it's Doc Ellis, so what the late Doc Ellis.
Doc Ellis was on a lot of drugs at the time. So
I don't know. He didn't say he was high this time. I mean, he pitched the no-hitter on LSD apparently, but I don't know. Any logic why you would just start beating people just to start? I guess he was sending a message. I'm not sure. Well, that's the end of the Cincinnati. There's one left here, and we're going to stick in baseball, and I feel rather passionately about this one. And that would be Chung Ho Gong in the takeout slide by Chris Coughlin of your Chicago Cubs. And I never had an opinion on the Chicago Cubs until this happened. And I really cannot stand the Chicago Cubs still this day. Like, I hope it just rankled me to no end. If it would have been for Cleveland playing them, I would have been all in for whoever's playing them in that World Series. But it just had to be freaking Cleveland. And, they win their stupid little World Series. Ooh, congratulations. You won World Series in 100 years. The Pirates still have 4 more than you in those 100 years. So, and they're the crappiest team. Okay. So September 7th is really.
Take a breath, Steve. Take a breath.
Calm down. Happy thoughts. Yeah. September 17th, 2015, during a game against the Cubs, they had a double play, and Chris Coughlin, who's a total bum, decides to slide in the center field and not second base. And if you watch the replay, his leg literally catches his knee. There's no attempt to slide, no nothing. It's just totally let's injure somebody. And Chung Ho Gong, his left knee is totally messed up. He tears his MCL. He gets he's done for the season. He missed the remainder of the year. The postseason and the wild card game, which the Pirates ended up hosting. Joe Madden in his genius, play who just said, this is just hard, good old fashioned baseball. Another bum. There ever was a bum. It just total thuggery and ridiculousness and goonish. This is like something that should have been done in hockey.
There's a ground ball to second. And the throw to first got him. Chung Ho is hurt. Play is still alive, but a takeout slide by Coughlin. He went after Chung Ho, and Chung Ho got rolled over.
What part of second base is in center field, Tim? I just want to know.
He didn't even touch second base.
No.
It's that was so unbelievably blatant. And like you said, just the hypocrisy of baseball, where it's like they wait till somebody that they care about gets hurt, then they make a rule change. Again, it's very similar to the NFL.
Yeah, Chase Utley did it to Ruben Tejada of the Mets, and then the Major Baseball was like, maybe we should change the rules. And what had happened was they had to play a rule called the neighborhood rule to kind of avoid this, where, okay, you're in the neighborhood of second, we'll consider you touching second. And it's kind of like, so once they bought instant replay, they had to get rid of that because now you actually have to go and touch second. Mm-hmm. So I guess, you can kind of blame instant replay. That's why he had to go touch second and throw to first. And the neighborhood rule is such a ridiculous rule anyway. Like, I meant to go. You can say that anytime, it's just, it was too much of a judgment call. The better call is what they changed it to, is you have to slide in the second or you're just going to be out. And they did the same thing at home plate when a couple people got concussions. Buster Posey got hurt. And once again, it's a San Francisco big team from a big city and Buster Posey, everybody likes him. He got hurt. So, everybody got, all up in arms. But and of course, Bob Nutting does nothing about this because he's Bob Nutting and he's too cheap and impotent to do anything about it. And it's just, once again, you need an owner to stand up for your players. And this literally effectively ended Chung Ho Gon's career. And that's the saddest part, is this guy was a good player and looked like he was going to have some more good years. And then he started drinking and got some DUIs. And, you could say, well, maybe he's going to do that anyway. I don't know. I think maybe if he's in baseball and not injured, he doesn't do that. So if I ever see Chris Coughlin, I think he's a coach somewhere, I'm going to boo. If I'm at a game and he's there, I'm going to boo him mercilessly. I don't care if he's in the dugout. It is also like, you want to talk about institutional racism. How is that not racist? How is that racist against Asian people? How is that not racist against? It's like there's so many levels to this and so much crap that this is, and it's number one, the Pirates are a small market. Number two, they knew they could get away with it because Bob Nutting isn't going to play. Number three, it's a player they don't really care about. It's just like, if this would have been Andrew McCutchen or any other player on the Pirates, they probably would have said something, but they didn't. And, poor Chung Ho Gon got hurt, and he was really had a good season that year. So maybe I'm overestimating Chung Ho Gon's worth to the Pirates. What say you, Tim?
Well, it was just, even if he wouldn't have had a good season, it was totally unjust ending his season, because you literally were just trying to kick him in the leg so that your guy at first base would be safe. And that's, the takeout slide was supposed to be, you slide into second base and take out the guy in the process. But that's why Kong had moved over so far off the bag to avoid that. And he sticks out his leg and takes out his knee. I mean, I don't know. You can't get any more dirty than that, I think. But it's baseball, and that's, like you said, that was like, well, that's a takeout play that's been happening for years, and blah blah blah. So it's why they have to make rules around these things. They have to like player safety rules, and even though baseball did it way too late and they did it for the wrong reasons, at least they made a rule that's going to hopefully protect that kind of stuff in the future. If there's anything good that came out of this, it was that.
Yeah, and Joe, I didn't look up the Joe Madden. If you want to, you can look up the Joe Madden quotes, who was the manager of the Cubs, like justifying it. And it wasn't, I don't even think he had, like, just the stuff he said, oh, it wasn't dirty. And it was the most twisted logic ever. It's like, oh, he was sliding. Like, everybody kept saying, oh, he was sliding in the second. Not unless second base is in center field. There's just no, you watch that replay, it's intent to injure. That's everything. The ball's gone. There's just no logical reason to do that. But hey, the Cubs got away with it and got awarded a World Series for their trouble. But yay, big market Chicago. And guess what? Chicago stinks again. They're like the Mets. They spend billions of dollars every year and you don't win anything. So ha ha ha. At least we don't spend billions of dollars and don't win anything. So eat it there, Cubs fans.
Yeah, we just spend very little
and don't win anything. Yeah. And bring back players that are well past their prime, like Chapman and McCutchen. Both those guys were good like 10 years ago. But anyway, that's it. If there's any cheap shots I missed, or if you'd like to come take a cheap shot at me, go find Tim. No. But thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate everybody listening, and email us if there's anything we missed. Check us out at PittsburghSportsMemories.com. Our website, all the podcast streaming services you've been listening to. We're just thankful for everybody listening, and God bless, and have a great rest of your day.